The first thing I noticed was the absence of noise. No casual hum of her voice on the phone, no clinking of her coffee spoon against the ceramic mug, no off-key humming as she folded laundry. Just silence. A void where a marriage used to be. At first, I brushed it off. Maybe she was stressed, maybe work was weighing on her. But then a week passed, and another, and another. She wasn't mad, not in the obvious way. No arguments, no accusations. She just stopped acknowledging me. I tested it. "Morning, Edith," I said one day as she stood by the sink, stirring her tea. No response. Not even a glance. That night, I placed her favorite snack, salted cashews, on the coffee table, a small olive branch. She reached for the bowl, ate a few, but still, nothing. Not a word. I lay in bed beside her, staring at the ceiling, my mind racing with possibilities. Had I done something? Said something? Was this a punishment? A phase? Then came the realization, the kind that settles into your bones, slow and suffocating. This wasn't temporary. This wasn't about a bad mood or a stressful month. This was something deeper, something calculated. She was phasing me out. And the worst part? I had no idea why. I started watching her more closely, looking for clues. She still left for work at the same time. Still came home, cooked dinner, scrolled through her phone. But there were changes, small at first. She stayed out later than usual. Her phone never left her side. She smelled of perfume I knew she didn't wear for me. I tried to act normal, to pretend like I didn't notice. But inside, I was unraveling. Every night, I lay awake next to her, feeling like I was sleeping beside a stranger. Then, one morning, I woke up to an empty bed. She was gone. But her phone was still on the nightstand. For the first time in weeks, my heart pounded. This was it. The moment I would finally get an answer. I picked up her phone, hands trembling. The screen was still unlocked. A message thread was open. I stared at the words, my breath catching in my throat. I can't keep pretending. It's getting too hard. I swallowed hard and scrolled up. My pulse pounded in my ears. He still has no idea? None. It's actually kind of funny at this point. I felt the ground beneath me shift. The person on the other end responded with a laughing emoji. And then Edith had sent a photo. I tapped it, my stomach twisting into knots. It loaded. It was blurry at first, but then it sharpened, and I felt my chest cave in. It was her. In a hotel room. Wearing a robe. Smiling into the camera. But what made my blood run cold was the reflection in the mirror behind her. A man. Sitting on the edge of the bed, his shirt half unbuttoned. I dropped the phone like it burned me. My ears started ringing. My body felt weightless, detached from reality. I stumbled back, gripping the edge of the nightstand. This wasn't just silence. This was betrayal. For weeks, I had been standing in the ruins of my marriage without even realizing it. And the worst part? She wasn't even trying to hide it anymore. The moment I dropped the phone, it felt like the room caved in on me. The air turned thick, suffocating, pressing down on my chest. My hands trembled as I reached for the nightstand to steady myself. The proof was right there in front of me, undeniable, irreversible. Edith wasn't just distant. She wasn't just going through something personal. She had already moved on, and I was nothing more than an afterthought, an inconvenience she hadn't yet gotten rid of. I forced myself to breathe, but my body wouldn't cooperate. My heart pounded against my ribs, my mind replaying the image on her phone like a broken record. The worst part wasn't even the betrayal itself. It was the fact that she found it funny. It's actually kind of funny at this point. Those words dug into my skin like hooks, pulling me into a pit I never thought I'd find myself in. I had spent weeks wondering what I had done wrong, breaking myself apart over her silence, trying to find a way to fix things. And all along, she had been laughing behind my back. I turned my head slowly toward her side of the bed. The sheets were slightly rumpled, her pillow still indented from where her head had rested just hours before. I imagined her lying there next to me, pretending like nothing was wrong, knowing she would slip away the moment I closed my eyes. How long had she been doing this? How many times had she walked through our front door, kissed me on the cheek, and gone to bed with the scent of another man still clinging to her skin? I couldn't stand still. My body was shaking, my thoughts racing too fast for me to catch them. I needed answers. I needed to know exactly what had been happening, how deep the deception ran. I grabbed her phone again, my fingers moving on their own, scrolling through the messages. There were more photos, some suggestive, others more casual, like two people in a normal relationship. A relationship I had no idea existed. There were messages about meeting up, about how much she missed him when she was stuck at home with me. And then I saw something that sent an entirely different kind of chill through my body. A message from just a few nights ago. I'm so close to being done with all of this. All of this. That meant me. That meant our marriage. I dropped onto the edge of the bed, staring at the floor, the weight of it all pressing down on me. It wasn't just that she was cheating. It was that I had already been erased. She was waiting for the right moment to walk away, as if I were just an old job she was tired of showing up for. The bedroom suddenly felt too small. The walls were closing in. I needed to get out. I grabbed my phone and keys, barely remembering to put on my shoes before I stepped outside into the crisp morning air. The sun was just beginning to rise, casting a dull glow over the quiet street. Everything looked the same, but nothing felt the same. I walked. I had no destination, no plan. My feet just carried me forward as my mind reeled. How long had she been planning this? Was she waiting for me to find out? Or was she going to sit me down one day and drop it on me like a casual announcement? I pulled out my phone and hovered over my best friend's number. I wanted to call someone, to say the words out loud, to make it real. But I hesitated. Saying it would mean accepting it, and I wasn't sure if I was ready for that yet. Instead, I just kept walking. By the time I made it back home, my legs ached and my head was pounding. The house was quiet, too quiet. Edith still wasn't back. A part of me wanted to confront her right then and there, to shove the phone in her face and demand an explanation. But another part of me knew it wouldn't matter. I had already seen enough. I wasn't sure what my next move would be, but one thing was clear. This silence? It was over. And so was whatever we had left. I sat in my car outside our house, gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. My pulse hadn't slowed since I walked out the door that morning, trying to escape the weight of what I had just discovered. My mind kept looping the same images, the messages, the photos, the casual cruelty in her words. It's actually kind of funny at this point. I replayed them over and over, hoping that maybe, just maybe, there was some other explanation. But there wasn't. I had seen everything I needed to see. I stared at the front door, debating whether I even wanted to step inside. Would she be back? Would she pretend like nothing happened, like I hadn't just seen proof that my entire marriage had been a lie? I had spent years in this house, filling it with love, with effort, with commitment. But now, it felt like enemy territory. I exhaled sharply and finally forced myself out of the car. The house was still eerily quiet when I stepped inside. I half expected Edith to be sitting on the couch, scrolling through her phone like she always did, barely acknowledging me as I walked in. But she wasn't there. The silence stretched on, pressing against my eardrums, making it feel like the walls themselves were watching me. I walked into the kitchen, placing my keys on the counter, trying to push back the hollow feeling in my chest. My eyes landed on her favorite coffee mug in the sink, a single lipstick stain still marking the rim. It was such a small thing, but it sent a fresh wave of anger through me. How could she carry on like everything was normal? How could she come home, sip her coffee, sit across from me at dinner, knowing what she was doing behind my back? I pulled out a chair and sat down at the table, running my hands down my face. For the first time in weeks, the silence between us wasn't just suffocating, it was unbearable. I had spent so much time pretending like I didn't notice, convincing myself that if I just tried harder, if I gave her space, things would get better. But they wouldn't. They never would. I pulled out my phone again, my thumb hovering over her messages. I could text her, tell her I knew everything, demand an answer. But what would she say? Would she deny it? Laugh it off? Get angry at me for snooping? Would she even care? I stared at the screen for a long moment before backing out of the messages and opening my contacts instead. My best friend, Gordon, was at the top of the list. He had been telling me for months that something was off. Man, she doesn't even look at you the same way anymore. Are you sure everything's okay? I had brushed him off every time, convinced myself that I was just imagining things. I hit the call button before I could second-guess myself. He picked up on the second ring. Hey, man, what's up? I opened my mouth to speak, but the words didn't come. It was like saying them out loud would make everything too real. Dude, he asked again, concern creeping into his voice. I exhaled sharply. I need to talk to someone. There was a pause on the other end, then a quiet, knowing sigh. You want to come over? Yeah. I grabbed my keys and walked back out the door without hesitation. Gordon lived 10 minutes away in an apartment that always smelled like takeout and cheap beer, but tonight, the familiarity of it was exactly what I needed. He pulled the door open before I even knocked, taking one look at my face before shaking his head. Damn, he muttered, stepping aside to let me in. That bad. I walked past him and collapsed onto the couch, rubbing my temples. Worse. He grabbed 2 beers from the fridge and handed me one before sitting across from me. All right. Spill. I took a deep breath, then finally let it out. Edith's cheating on me. The words felt foreign in my mouth, like they belonged to someone else's life. But they were mine. They were my reality now. Gordon didn't react right away. He just sat there, watching me, his jaw tightening. How do you know? I let out a bitter laugh. Her phone. She left it unlocked this morning. He winced. Damn. That's brutal. I took a long sip of my beer, staring at the coffee table like it held the answers I didn't have. She's been acting weird for weeks. Not talking to me, not looking at me. I thought it was just, I stopped myself, shaking my head. I don't even know what I thought. But she's not even trying to hide it anymore. She's been laughing about it. Gordon cursed under his breath, running a hand through his hair. What are you going to do? That was the question, wasn't it? What was I going to do? I had spent years building a life with this woman, believing in a future that clearly didn't exist. I had wasted so much time trying to fix something that had been broken long before I even realized it. And now? I finished my beer and set the bottle down with a finality that surprised even me. I think I'm done, I said, the words leaving my lips before I even realized I had made the decision. For the first time in weeks, maybe even months, I felt like I could finally breathe. I sat there in Gordon's apartment, the beer bottle cold in my hands, my thoughts still trying to catch up with the words I had just spoken. I think I'm done. It wasn't something I had planned to say. It just came out, like my mind had finally stopped fighting against what my heart already knew. Gordon exhaled, nodding slowly. You sure? That was the thing. For weeks, I had been drowning in uncertainty, grasping at anything that would make sense of Edith's silence. But this was the first thing I had felt sure of in a long time. Yeah, I muttered, leaning back into the couch. I can't do this anymore. I don't want to be the guy who waits around, hoping she'll suddenly remember she loves me. Gordon let out a low whistle. Man, I was waiting for you to say that. I frowned, looking at him. What's that supposed to mean? He hesitated, rubbing the back of his neck. I didn't want to say anything before, but this thing with Edith? It didn't start recently. My stomach dropped. What? He shifted uncomfortably in his seat. I mean, yeah, the cheating part? Maybe that's new. But the way she's been treating you? It's been going on for a while, man. You just didn't want to see it. I opened my mouth to argue, but the words died in my throat. Because he was right. Deep down, I knew it. The way she used to look at me with warmth, with admiration, that had faded long before the silence set in. I had been living in denial, convincing myself that things were fine, that love didn't just disappear. But it had, at least for her. I rubbed my face, feeling the weight of it all pressing down on me. So what do I do now? Gordon shrugged. That's up to you. But if I were you, I'd stop giving her the power to decide what happens next. His words stuck with me as I drove home. The house was dark when I pulled into the driveway. For a split second, I allowed myself to hope that maybe, just maybe, she was inside, waiting. That maybe she had realized what she was doing and was ready to talk. But when I walked in, the house was empty. And something was different. I stood in the middle of the living room, scanning my surroundings. It took me a moment to realize what had changed. Things were missing. Small things. The framed picture of us from our anniversary trip. Her favorite blanket from the couch. A few books from the shelf. I walked into the bedroom, and my chest tightened. Her closet was half empty. She was already leaving. Not a word. No warning. No goodbye. The anger hit me like a wave. Not just because she was leaving, but because she had been planning it long before I had even found out. She had been slipping away piece by piece, taking parts of our life with her, and I had been too blind to see it. I sat on the edge of the bed, gripping my hair, trying to process what I was looking at. The silence I had been drowning in for weeks. It wasn't just apathy. It was preparation. She had checked out of our marriage long before I even realized there was a problem. And now, she wasn't just walking away. She was erasing me. The thought sent a chill down my spine. All this time, I had been struggling to understand her silence, trying to figure out what I had done wrong. But the truth was, it had nothing to do with me. She had made up her mind a long time ago. And that was the most painful part. I clenched my jaw and stood up, my decision solidifying in my mind. If she wanted to leave, fine. But I wasn't going to sit here and watch her rewrite history. I grabbed my phone and took pictures of everything. The half-empty closet. The missing picture frames. The nightstand where her phone had sat that morning, filled with evidence of her betrayal. I wasn't going to let her walk away from this like it was nothing. She might have been preparing to leave, But so was I. I sat there for what felt like hours, staring at the half-empty closet, my mind refusing to fully accept what was happening. It was surreal. How someone could build a life with you, share your bed, your dreams, your laughter, and then slowly, piece by piece, remove themselves from it without you even noticing. The silence she had wrapped herself in wasn't just distance. It was an exit strategy. I should have been furious. I should have been breaking things, demanding answers, chasing her down to make her explain herself. But all I felt was empty. Like I had been running on fumes for weeks, and now that I had the truth, there was nothing left to keep me going. I pulled out my phone and scrolled through the photos I had taken. Evidence, I supposed, though I wasn't sure of what yet. Maybe proof that this wasn't in my head, that I hadn't imagined the growing distance between us. Maybe because I knew that soon, when she was gone completely, there would be no trace of her ever loving me. The front door clicked open, and my entire body went rigid. Footsteps. Slow, careful, almost hesitant. She hadn't expected me to be here. I stayed where I was, my hands gripping the phone so tightly my knuckles ached. Then she appeared in the doorway. Edith. For weeks, I had barely seen her face. I had seen her body moving through our house like a ghost, her back always turned, her eyes always elsewhere. But now, standing here, she looked different. Like she wasn't sure whether to be relieved or annoyed that I was still here. She didn't say anything right away, just exhaled softly and set her purse down on the dresser. I watched her, waiting for an explanation, an excuse, anything. Nothing. She just turned away, like I wasn't even there. Something inside me snapped. That's it. My voice came out steadier than I expected. She froze, her hand hovering over a drawer she had clearly intended to empty. I stood up, forcing her to look at me. You just disappear for weeks, and now you're packing up like it's nothing? She sighed, rubbing her temple. Not now, okay? I'm tired. Tired. I let out a bitter laugh. Yeah? Try being the guy who spent the last few months wondering what the hell happened to his wife. She finally turned to face me, her expression unreadable. Joel, let's not do this. Do what? I gestured around the room. Pretend like you weren't planning to leave before I even found out? That you weren't already gone before I got the memo? Her jaw tensed. I didn't want to do it this way. I scoffed. No? Then how were you going to do it? Were you just going to wait until I came home one day and everything was gone? She didn't answer. And that was the answer. I ran a hand through my hair, pacing. Jesus, Edith. She crossed her arms, suddenly defensive. I didn't want to fight. I stopped pacing and looked at her. Really looked at her. This was the woman I had built my life around. The person I had trusted more than anyone. And now, she was standing here, avoiding my eyes, acting like I was the inconvenience. My voice was quieter when I spoke again. Did you ever love me? Something flickered across her face. Guilt? Maybe. But it was gone too fast to know for sure. She swallowed. I did. I nodded, staring at the floor. And now? She didn't answer. Silence. Again. I exhaled, feeling something deep inside me shatter. That's all I needed to know, I said finally. I grabbed my keys and walked past her, out the door, down the stairs. I didn't know where I was going. I just knew I wasn't staying. I don't remember much of the drive. My hands gripped the wheel, my knuckles white, my foot pressing the gas a little harder than necessary. The streets blurred past, streetlights flashing in and out of focus like a reel of a life I no longer recognized. I wasn't driving anywhere in particular, just away. Away from that house, away from the half-empty closet, away from the woman who had looked me in the eyes and decided I wasn't worth an explanation. At some point, I pulled into a parking lot. One of those all-night diners, the kind with flickering neon signs and coffee that tasted like burnt regret. I parked but didn't move, just sat there, staring at the cracks in the asphalt, my pulse still hammering in my ears. She had been planning to leave. Weeks, maybe months. While I was losing sleep trying to figure out what had gone wrong, she was mapping out her escape. And I had let it happen. I had let her erase me. I exhaled and rubbed my hands over my face, trying to shake off the weight pressing down on my chest. I needed to think. I needed clarity. But all I could hear was her voice. I did love you. Not I do. I did. Past tense. Like I was a memory she had already packed away with the things missing from our bedroom. The waitress knocked on my window, snapping me out of it. I hadn't even noticed her approach. She gave me a polite but cautious smile, her notepad already in hand. You okay in there? I realized then how I must have looked, sitting there in the dim glow of the dashboard lights, eyes unfocused, shoulders tense. I forced a nod and rolled the window down slightly. Yeah, just long night. She nodded like she understood, but we both knew she didn't. You want some coffee? I hesitated, then nodded. Yeah, black. She disappeared back inside, and I leaned against the headrest, staring at the diner's entrance. A couple sat at a booth by the window, laughing over a shared plate of fries. They looked young, maybe early 20s, probably still in that phase where love felt invincible. I wondered if I had ever looked like that with Edith. The waitress returned with the to-go cup, and I thanked her, handing over a couple of bills before rolling the window back up. I didn't drink it right away. I just held it, letting the warmth seep into my fingers, trying to ground myself. Then, almost without thinking, I pulled out my phone. My thumb hovered over her contact. I had so many things I wanted to say, so many questions I deserved answers to, but I knew I wouldn't get them. Instead, I did something I never thought I'd do. I scrolled down and clicked on the one person I had never expected to call. Ronan. It rang. Once. Twice. Then a voice I hadn't heard in years answered. Joel? I exhaled sharply, gripping the coffee cup like a lifeline. Hey, I said, my voice rough. I think I need to talk. A pause. Then, where are you? I glanced around. Some diner off Highway 22. I'll be there in 20. The call ended, and I stared at my screen, my pulse unsteady. I hadn't spoken to Ronan in years. Not since the falling out. Not since Edith had told me I was better off without him. And yet, here I was, reaching for the past, because the future I had built had just collapsed beneath my feet. I took a sip of the coffee, the bitterness grounding me. For the first time in weeks, I didn't feel entirely alone. The diner was half empty by the time Ronan walked in. He looked almost exactly the same, broad-shouldered, a little scruffy, the same easy confidence in his stride. But there was something else too. A flicker of hesitation. Like he wasn't sure if he should be here. I wasn't sure either. He spotted me in the booth near the back, gave a nod, and slid into the seat across from me. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. We just sat there, the weight of years of distance between us, thick and unspoken. Then he let out a breath. Didn't think I'd ever get a call from you. I stared at my coffee, fingers tracing the rim of the mug. Yeah, me neither. He leaned back, studying me. So, what's going on? I huffed a dry laugh. Where do I start? Try the beginning. I should have felt awkward. We hadn't spoken in nearly 6 years, ever since Edith made it clear that she didn't want him in our lives. And like a fool, I listened. She told me he was a bad influence, that he never took life seriously, that he dragged me into trouble. And maybe she wasn't entirely wrong. Ronan was reckless back then. Always jumping from job to job, chasing the next thrill, never settling down. But he was also my oldest friend. The guy who had my back when no one else did. And I threw that away. For her. I let out a breath and finally looked at him. Edith's been cheating on me. His expression didn't change much, but his jaw tightened slightly. He didn't look surprised. And that stung more than I expected. You knew, I said, my voice quieter than I meant it to be. He didn't answer right away. Instead, he flagged down a waitress, ordered a coffee, then folded his arms on the table. I didn't know, but I had a feeling. I exhaled, running a hand through my hair. Yeah, guess I was the last one to catch up. She gone? I nodded. Not completely, but she's been pulling away for months. And now I know why. Ronan shook his head, letting out a bitter chuckle. You know, I wanted to say something back then, when she started pushing me out of your life. But I figured you'd made your choice. I flinched, guilt settling deep in my chest. I did. Silence stretched between us again. Then he sighed. So, what now? That was the question, wasn't it? What now? For weeks, I had been in limbo, waiting for her to talk, waiting for her to give me some kind of closure. But now, I realized something. She wasn't going to give me closure. I had to take it myself. I don't know yet, I admitted, but I think I'm done waiting around for her to decide. Ronan smirked, shaking his head. About time. The waitress dropped off his coffee, and he took a slow sip before looking back at me. Listen, man, I don't know what you need right now, but whatever it is, you don't have to figure it out alone. I hadn't realized how much I needed to hear that. For so long, I had been drowning in silence, Edith's silence, my own silence. But for the first time in weeks, maybe even years, I felt like I could breathe again. And this time, I wasn't going to let her take that away from me. The sun was starting to rise when I pulled back into my driveway. I hadn't slept. I wasn't even sure I could if I tried. But for the first time in weeks, I didn't feel like I was suffocating. Ronan and I had talked for hours about everything. The past, the way I let myself get lost in a marriage that wasn't really a marriage anymore. The version of me I had abandoned trying to be what Edith wanted. Somewhere along the way, I realized something. I had spent years trying to hold onto something that had already slipped through my fingers. I had let someone else dictate my worth. And now, standing at my front door, I finally understood. I was done. I stepped inside, half expecting to see Edith sitting in the living room, waiting to feed me some half-hearted excuse. But the house was still. And then I noticed the closet was completely empty. She was gone. No note. No text. No goodbye. And yet, for the first time, I didn't feel abandoned. I felt free. I stood there for a long moment, letting the silence settle in. It wasn't the heavy, suffocating silence I had been drowning in before. This was different. This was peace. I walked into the kitchen, made myself a cup of coffee, and sat at the table. I didn't check my phone. I didn't wonder what she was doing. I just existed. And it felt good. Then, almost instinctively, I picked up my phone and called Ronan. "Yo," he answered, sounding half asleep. I smirked. "You still have that extra room?" A pause. Then a chuckle. "About damn time." I leaned back in my chair, staring out the window as the morning light filled the room. I didn't know exactly what was next. But I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't waiting for someone else to decide my future ever again. This wasn't the end of something. It was the beginning.